The Galactic Council's chamber shimmered with a myriad of alien forms, each species boasting its own unique physical presence, and yet all of them carried the same aura of superiority. Chancellor Valek, tall and imposing, his bioluminescent skin casting faint blue light across the chamber, stood at the center. His many eyes scanned the assembly with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Today would mark the beginning of the end for the human species. "Let us make no mistake," Valek began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Humanity is an anomaly, a threat to the order of the galaxy. Their rapid expansion, their defiance, it cannot be allowed to continue. They are primitive compared to us, but dangerous. War is our only choice." A murmur of agreement passed through the chamber. Species from all corners of the galaxy, each one representing a civilization far older, far more advanced than the upstart humans, nodded, their arrogance palpable. They had faced hundreds of species before, and none had withstood the Council's might. The humans would be no different, and soon their homeworld would be reduced to ashes. Valek paused, letting the anticipation build before making the final declaration. "War," he announced, "is declared on humanity." The chamber erupted in cheers, a deafening wave of approval sweeping through the Council. They believed in their victory with absolute certainty. After all, they had the most formidable fleets, the most advanced technologies. Humanity was nothing more than an insect to be crushed. But far from the grandeur of the Council's chamber, on the edge of human space, Admiral Zara Kendrick stood in silence aboard the SS Vindicator, Earth's command ship. Her sharp gaze was fixed on the holographic display before her, the galactic map glowing softly in the dim light of the bridge. Red markers blinked across the display, indicating the movement of the Council's fleets as they began to mobilize. War had been declared. The transmission had just come through. Around her, the crew of the SS Vindicator worked quietly, their hands moving over controls, their expressions tense. They, too, had heard the transmission, but none of them dared to speak. Admiral Kendrick's reputation preceded her calm under pressure, unflinching in the face of overwhelming odds. But those closest to her knew she carried the weight of each loss, each battle that had come before this moment. Kendrick's face betrayed none of the tension simmering beneath the surface. She had known this day would come. Humanity's expansion into the stars had always been met with resistance, suspicion, and now, open hostility. But she wasn't here to grieve over the Council's arrogance or to fear what was to come. She was here to win. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady, cutting through the stillness of the bridge like a blade. "Council fleets are on the move," Admiral came the reply from her first officer, Captain Wallace. 3 battle groups converging on the outer colonies. Estimated time to contact: 3 hours. Kendrick nodded, her gaze never leaving the map. 3 hours. That was all the time they had before the Council's first strike hit their defenses. But humanity had prepared for this. Kendrick had prepared for this. The Council believed they were superior, that their fleets would sweep across human space without resistance. They were wrong. "Activate the orbital defense platforms," she said calmly. "Deploy all available forces to the Alpha Centauri defense line." Wallace hesitated, his brow furrowing as he studied the holographic display. "Admiral, Alpha Centauri is their first target. They'll throw everything they have at it." "I know," Kendrick replied, her voice cold, calculating. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." She turned from the display, her mind briefly drifting to the faces of those she had lost in the skirmishes leading up to this moment. Friends, family. Every battle had come at a cost, and Kendrick had felt each loss keenly. But there was no room for hesitation now. The survival of Earth, of humanity itself, depended on her resolve. The bridge of the SS Vindicator remained tense, the crew exchanging quiet, uneasy glances. They trusted Kendrick. She had led them through countless battles, each time against enemies more powerful, more technologically advanced. But this was different. The Galactic Council was unlike anything they had faced before. Their fleets outnumbered humanity's forces 100 to 1. Their technology was light years ahead. On paper, it was a war humanity couldn't hope to win. But Admiral Kendrick didn't believe in numbers. She believed in preparation, in strategy, and in the human will to survive. The Council had declared war. Now, they would face the full might of humanity's vengeance. "They'll underestimate US," Kendrick murmured to herself, her eyes narrowing as she studied the Council's battle groups inching closer to human space. "And they'll realize their mistake too late." In the dim light of the bridge, Kendrick stood tall, her expression resolute. The war was coming, and the Council believed they had already won. But humanity had a habit of defying expectations. And this time, the Council would pay the price for their arrogance. The Council's fleets descended on the outer human colonies with a precision and coordination that had crushed countless species before. Massive warships, their hulls gleaming with alien metals and adorned with the markings of dozens of different species, drifted in formation. Their weapon systems, decades ahead of anything most species could imagine, hummed with power, ready to rain destruction upon the humans who dared defy the Galactic Council. Chancellor Valek watched the unfolding assault from the command ship, the Supreme, his many eyes tracking the movements of the fleets. His lips curled into a satisfied smile. This would be swift. The humans would be reduced to ashes, just like every other race that had dared to challenge the Council. "Proceed with the attack," he commanded, his voice filled with confidence. The admirals across the fleets received the signal, and the first wave of the assault began. Columns of sleek alien ships surged forward, their formation impeccable, their confidence unshaken. Their target, Alpha Centauri, the nearest human colony to the Council's space. It was a show of power designed to demonstrate the Council's dominance. The humans had no hope of resisting such an overwhelming force. Inside the bridge of the lead alien ship, Commander Gear, a veteran of countless campaigns, gazed at the human planet below, his tentacle-like limbs twitching with anticipation. He had studied the humans and found them laughably primitive, barely worthy of notice. Now, their defiance would be their undoing. "Ready the disintegration beams," Gra ordered, his voice brimming with superiority. "We'll cleanse the planet in a matter of moments. Let them see the might of the Council." But before the order could be fully carried out, something unexpected happened. The space around Alpha Centauri lit up with sudden, terrifying brilliance. Glowing orbs materialized above the planet, flickering with energy. "Sir, what is that?" one of Gear's officers asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Gear narrowed his eyes, studying the unfamiliar energy signatures. "A primitive defense system, no doubt," he sneered. "We'll cut through it easily." However, the confidence in Gear's voice quickly faded when the first human orbital defense platform opened fire. From the planet's upper atmosphere, beams of pure energy erupted from the platforms, tearing through space with blinding speed. The Council's ships, built for offense rather than defense, had no time to react. The first beam struck an alien battleship, slicing cleanly through its hull. An explosion followed, sending debris scattering across the fleet. Panic rippled through the alien ranks. "Incoming fire! Shields are down!" shouted one of Gear's officers, his voice trembling. Another beam tore through a cruiser, reducing it to nothing more than a cloud of molten metal in seconds. Gear watched in horror as the once orderly formation of Council ships crumbled. They had underestimated the humans. Aboard the SS Vindicator, Admiral Kendrick stood calmly at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holo display showing the chaotic battle unfolding around Alpha Centauri. The Council's fleets, so sure of their superiority, were now facing the full power of humanity's secret weapons. "Report," Kendrick ordered, her tone unshaken. "Orbital platforms are engaging the enemy," Admiral Captain Wallace said, glancing at the tactical readout. First wave of Council ships. Destroyed. Kendrick allowed herself the smallest of nods. As expected, the orbital defense platforms, designed in secret and armed with technology far beyond what the Council believed humans were capable of, had been her ace in the hole. The Council's fleets, confident in their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology, had walked straight into the trap. "Continue the assault," Kendrick commanded. "I want their entire formation shattered before they can regroup." Across the defense network, human operators followed the Admiral's orders without hesitation. More beams of energy lanced out from the platforms, cutting through the alien ships with brutal efficiency. One by one, the ships that had once blotted out the stars were reduced to smoldering wrecks, their once mighty hulls now drifting in space as nothing more than debris. On board the Supreme, Chancellor Valek's smug expression had vanished. His eyes darted between screens, watching in disbelief as his elite fleets were torn apart. How could this be happening? The humans were supposed to be easy prey, their technology centuries behind that of the Council. Impossible. Valek muttered, his voice shaking for the first time. Chancellor, our forces are being annihilated. One of his advisors shouted in panic. The humans have. They have weapons we've never seen before. Valek's hands gripped the edge of his command console, his mind racing. This was not how the war was supposed to go. Humanity was supposed to be unprepared, outmatched. Instead, they had revealed a level of readiness that no one had anticipated. Pull the remaining ships back. Valek ordered through gritted teeth. We cannot afford to lose our entire fleet here. But as he spoke, another wave of human attacks obliterated the Council's forces. The few remaining ships scrambled to escape, their sleek forms now fleeing from what had been a guaranteed victory. Admiral Kendrick watched as the last of the Council's fleet disappeared from the display. The first wave had been destroyed, and the humans had suffered no losses. But she knew this was only the beginning. They'll send more, she said quietly. This was just the first move. Her eyes remained fixed on the stars, knowing that somewhere the Council was already planning its next strike. But humanity was ready, and this time they would not be caught unprepared. Chancellor Valek sat in his private quarters aboard the Supreme, his many eyes flicking across the holo displays. Streams of data scrolled before him, each one detailing the latest movements of the Council's forces. Despite the initial shock of the human defense at Alpha Centauri, Valek remained calm, his mind always 3 steps ahead. The humans were an inconvenience, but ultimately they were nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. Valek had orchestrated this war for more than just the destruction of humanity. The conflict would serve as a perfect distraction, pulling attention away from his own political maneuvers within the Galactic Council. His rivals, those who dared to challenge his supremacy, would fall while they focused on the humans. And when the dust settled, Valek would be the uncontested leader of the galaxy. Let them think they've won a small victory, Valek murmured, his lips curling into a faint smile. It will make their fall all the sweeter. He activated a communication link to his inner circle of allies within the Council. Each of them appeared as shimmering holograms around him, their forms barely distinguishable against the ambient light of his quarters. The first wave was a setback, Valek said, his voice calm and calculated. But we will regroup. The humans are not as primitive as we believed, but they are still no match for the full might of the Council. His advisors nodded, though their expressions were tense. Valek could sense their unease, but he remained confident. The humans would fall, and with their destruction, his power would only grow. As Valek prepared to deliver his next orders, a soft chime echoed through the room. Another transmission, this one marked urgent. Valek frowned. He hadn't anticipated any immediate updates. Chancellor. One of his fleet commanders reported, his voice strained, the humans. They've launched a counterattack. Several of our forward bases are under assault. We're losing contact with them. Valek's eyes narrowed, the calm in his voice cracking for the first time. What do you mean? How are they able to strike back so soon? Before the commander could respond, a second report came through. Chancellor, we've lost communication with the Zarkhan supply lines. We believe the humans are jamming our systems. Their attacks are the transmission cut out, leaving only static. Valek's mind raced. The humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. Their technology, their tactics, none of it matched what he had planned for. And yet, they were systematically dismantling the Council's forward bases, one after another. He slammed his fist onto the console, his frustration boiling over. How? Aboard the SS Vindicator, Admiral Kendrick moved with cold precision. The counterattack was well underway, her forces targeting key Council installations in a series of perfectly coordinated strikes. Human ships, sleek and agile, slipped past the Council's defensive lines, delivering devastating blows to their communications arrays and supply depots. "Target the next forward base," Kendrick ordered, her voice calm. "Disable their command structure." Human forces, equipped with stealth technology and experimental weapons, outmaneuvered the Council's fleets with ease. While the Council's ships were large and powerful, they were too slow to keep up with the hit-and-run tactics Kendrick had devised. Each strike crippled the Council's ability to regroup, sending shockwaves through their command structure. Reports streamed in from across the battlefront. Another base obliterated. Another fleet scattered. Kendrick didn't celebrate, though. This was just the beginning. Admiral Captain Wallace called from his station. "We've confirmed destruction of the final communications hub. The Council's command networks are in chaos." Kendrick nodded, her eyes narrowing as she studied the holo display. Red markers blinked out one by one, signaling the Council's growing desperation. "Good," she said. "Now we move on their supply lines." Back in the Council chambers, the once confident leaders of the galaxy had descended into chaos. Panicked voices filled the room as reports of the human counterattack continued to flood in. Fleets that were supposed to be indestructible were being torn apart. Bases that had stood for centuries were being reduced to rubble. "They've jammed our communications," one Council member shouted, his voice frantic. "We've lost contact with half our forces. How is this possible?" Another demanded, her eyes wide with fear. "How could the humans be doing this?" Chancellor Valek stood at the center of the chamber, his once steady composure now faltering. He had underestimated humanity, just like the rest of them. But more than that, he had underestimated their capacity for war. The Council's fleets were faltering, not because they lacked strength, but because the humans had used their superior mobility and cunning to outmaneuver them at every turn. Valek's mind raced as he tried to regain control of the situation. "We must regroup," he ordered, though the strain in his voice was evident. "Rally the remaining fleets. We cannot let them, Chancellor." Another panicked report cut him off. "The humans have just destroyed the supply lines to our central base at Zurich 9. We won't be able to support our fleets in the outer sectors." The room fell silent, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Valek's desperation grew as more reports of destruction rolled in. Human ships were faster, more agile, and deadlier than anyone had anticipated. Every tactic the Council had prepared was being countered, and their fleets were crumbling under the relentless assault. "Pull the remaining forces back," Valek barked, his voice betraying the panic he had tried to suppress. "We need to consolidate our defenses." But deep down, he knew it was already too late. The humans had turned the tide of the war, and now they were coming for the Council's heart. The Council's remaining fleet floated silently near the edges of the Zarin nebula, its ships scattered and disorganized. To any observer, it would appear they were struggling to regroup, weakened from the relentless human counterattacks. The Galactic Council had devised their final tactic to appear vulnerable and draw the human forces into an all-out battle. Chancellor Valek had positioned his warships just beyond the edge of the nebula, hoping their apparent weakness would lure Admiral Kendrick into a decisive engagement. "Let them think we're broken," Valek murmured, watching the holo display aboard the Supreme. His fleet was arranged to feign disarray, but hidden beneath the nebula's thick veil of cosmic gas lay dozens of heavily armed ships waiting to spring the trap. When the humans entered the field, the Council's hidden forces would strike, delivering a crushing blow. Valek's fingers drummed lightly on the arm of his command chair. "Once they're trapped, we'll finish them." Far across the nebula, aboard the SS Vindicator, Admiral Kendrick studied the battle reports. The Council's fleet appeared weak, scattered, and ripe for destruction. Yet, something gnawed at her instincts. The Council had never been this disorganized, not even during the worst of their losses. Admiral Captain Wallace said, his voice low but urgent. "The Council's fleet is exposed. If we strike now, we could end this." Kendrick's eyes remained on the holographic display, her mind racing through possibilities. "No," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "It's too easy. They want us to rush in." She turned to her officers, her decision made. "Hold half of our fleet in reserve behind the asteroid field. We'll let them think we've taken the bait." The human fleet surged toward the seemingly vulnerable Council ships, weapons primed for the final assault. Valak watched with growing anticipation as the humans closed in, their ships cutting through space with precision. Now Valak ordered, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Spring the trap." From the nebula's depths, the hidden Council warships burst forth, their energy weapons blazing. Dozens of human ships were caught off guard, overwhelmed by the sudden onslaught. It was a brutal ambush just as Valak had planned. But then, something went wrong. As the Council's forces engaged, the human ships began to pull back, retreating in a coordinated maneuver. Valak's eyes narrowed in confusion. What are they? Before he could finish, the second wave of human ships, Kendrick's reserve fleet, appeared from behind the asteroid field, flanking the Council's forces. The humans had set a trap within the trap. The Council's fleet, now surrounded, was annihilated in minutes. Human ships fired relentlessly, cutting through alien warships with deadly efficiency. Valak watched in horror as his fleet was decimated, his plan crumbling before him. "How?" he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. How did they know? With the Council's forces in ruins, Valak retreated to the command chamber deep within the Supreme. His last gambit had failed, and now there was only one option left. Desperation gripped him as he activated the final weapon, a superweapon hidden within a distant, heavily fortified station. It was his ultimate contingency plan designed to wipe out humanity entirely. The weapon would release a wave of destruction across the galaxy, targeting Earth itself. Valak's lips twisted into a snarl as he entered the final command codes. "You will all burn." Aboard the SS Vindicator, Kendrick's crew detected the energy spike just as the last of the Council's ships were destroyed. "Admiral, we're detecting a massive energy buildup," Captain Wallace said, his voice tight with alarm. "It's coming from Valak's command station." Kendrick's eyes narrowed. "He's launching something. We need to stop it." She immediately ordered her fleet to target Valak's command station. The human ships, already bloodied from the ambush, surged toward the station with renewed focus. Valak's final weapon, if launched, would wipe out Earth. There was no room for failure. As they approached the station, its defenses came to life. Valak had fortified it with everything he had left: heavy artillery, automated turrets, and energy shields that absorbed the initial barrage from the human fleet. "Focus all fire on the shield generators," Kendrick ordered, her voice cold and decisive. The battle was brutal. Human ships took heavy losses as they bombarded the station's defenses, but Kendrick's tactics were relentless. Finally, a concentrated strike took down the station's shields, exposing its vulnerable core. "Target the weapons control center," Kendrick commanded. "Take it out." A final volley of torpedoes streaked toward the station. Seconds stretched into eternity as they closed the distance, and then impact. The station exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the weapon destroyed before it could fire. Valak's last hope had been obliterated. Hansler Valak's broken body was found amidst the wreckage of the Supreme, his once great plans reduced to ashes. With his death, the Galactic Council collapsed. Alien civilizations, leaderless and in chaos, could no longer resist the human forces. The war was over. Aboard the SS Vindicator, Admiral Kendrick stood alone on the bridge, staring out into the endless expanse of stars. The war had been won, but victory came at a cost. The galaxy was forever changed. Civilizations that had once ruled it now lay in ruins, their arrogance shattered by the ruthlessness of humanity's campaign. Kendrick's reflection in the viewing port looked back at her, cold and distant. The humans had triumphed, but what had they become in the process? They had fought with precision, with overwhelming force, and with a determination that left no room for mercy. The galaxy had learned to fear them. "We've won," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the ship's engines. But at what cost? The SS Vindicator turned toward Earth, leaving the ruins of Valak's ambitions behind. The galaxy would remember this war, how humanity had risen from the brink of extinction to become its new dominant force. But Kendrick knew that the scars of this victory would linger long after the battles had ended.